I had some leftover black cotton muslin from a previous project, and using this fabric I decided to make a wrap top and experiment with some sleeve details. My plan was to make an oversized blouse with wrapped front, gathered peplum, and a big ruffled sleeve that gathers up with ribbon ties. Since my fabric piece was pretty narrow and I didn't have a lot, I had to plan carefully not to waste any fabric. I designed the top to be made up mostly with rectangles and mapped out all the pieces on my fabric. I folded the fabric lengthwise and marked 4 inches for the neck opening, 1 inch for the shoulder slope, 7 inches for the armhole from the shoulder point, and 16 inches for the front length from the edge of the fabric. This is the front length I determined from the neck point over the bust, plus 1 inch for seam allowances. I forgot to mention, but this length is a measurement from the center back to where you want your shoulder seam to be, plus 1 inch. Mine is 11 inches, and this is going to be a dropped shoulder style. Three or 4 inches for the neckline guide. The front will be a wrap style v-neck, but you'll see later why I do this. Come in 1 inch for the armhole shaping. There is not a lot of armhole shaping here, but it's because this top is an oversized style. Mark half of the measurement between bust tops. Cut on the lines except for the neckline. Make a notch to transfer the bust top reference point on the other side. Mark 1 inch up from the bottom for the waistline shaping. To draw the neckline, this is what you should not do. It's tempting to just draw a straight line from the neck point like this, but if you do this, there is not enough room for your neck and you will feel choked in the front. So instead, connect the straight line with the round neckline. It'll still look pretty straight on your body. Looking at how it's coming along so far, I decided to give 2 inch waistline shaping instead of 1 inch. I'm doing this at the waistline, but this is actually to accommodate room for your bust. So if you're full busted, you need more shaping here because you need more fabric in the front to go over your bust. So I'm going to mirror the shaping on the other side and reshape the front opening. This is just one of the front bodices. Cut the other side using this side as a template. But just don't forget to put right sides together or wrong sides together to mirror the shape when you're cutting out. From this unwanted part, cut out 2 inch wide bias strips to use later. Fold fabric lengthwise and place one front piece to copy the shape. If you had lost the center front fold line, place the neck point 4 inches from the fold, shoulder point at 1 inch from the straight cut edge. Come down 1 inch for the back neckline shaping. For the back waistline, just square down from the side waist. This is a double layer, and I'm folding the double layer in half lengthwise to cut out both sides of the sleeves at once. Mark 5 inches from the fold. 1/2 inch mark for the seam allowance, and using a small plate or any round object, draw these shapes. I adjusted a little so I have a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the other end too. Using this as a template, copy the shape on the other side. The fold line will be the center of the sleeve, and you have 3 pieces for one sleeve. To make pleated ruffles, I folded 2-inch strips lengthwise and sewed the edge first. Then used an awl to push the fabric under the presser foot. I did 2 stitches, pushed a little bit of fabric, 2 stitches, and so on. The number of stitches and how much fabric you push at once is entirely up to you. You can do some samples to determine how your pleats should look like. You need 4 of these pleated strips. Place the pleated strips along the rounded edges of the centerpiece of the sleeve. Take your time to lay the pleats neatly along the edges. Machine baste the pleats in place. Sandwich the pleated strips with the side sleeve pieces and sew. You need to clip right up to the dip to release the seam allowance. Overlock the raw edges with the serger or zigzag stitches. Pinch the fabric with your left hand to straighten the edge. For the hem of the sleeves, I basted and hand stitched for the clean finish. Flip the sleeve pieces over and place the 2-inch bias strip you cut out earlier from the front bodice left over. This is going to be the casing for the ribbon ties. I drew guidelines for the placement with fabric chalk. After edge stitching the casing in place, I sewed the straight line in the middle to make 2 channels. Fold 1 inch wide strip in half, stitch close to the edge and turn them inside out to make 4 long skinny ties. Push in one end of the ties and try to make it lay flat inside using an awl. And sew it closed. Thread the ties in the casings. The raw ends of the ties should be on the top of the sleeves. Adjust the ties to the lengths you want and stitch them in place at the top. Cut off the excess. This is the idea. I think it looks pretty cute. I gave 1 inch shaping to the armhole. It's not much of a shaping because the blouse is oversized and has dropped shoulders. Here I'm adjusting the bodice pieces. I cut off a ½ inch at the top of the armhole only on the front bodice. Usually people's shoulders curl forward, so armholes should be longer in the back. After sewing the shoulders together, I draped the piece over myself, and I felt that the armholes weren't quite as loose as I wanted, so I decided to lower them by 1½ inches. Also, I bound the neckline with black bias tape from a store because I couldn't squeeze out the bias binding from the same fabric. In the same way as the sleeve ties, make 4 of the shorter ties for tying the front wrap. Placements for the front wrap ties are a bit tricky. It's easier to lay the bodice down and imagine how you would tie them when putting the blouse on. Each end of the front bodice will have 1 tie, and the one is on the outside of the bodice side seam, and the one is on the inside of the other side of the side seam. Once you figure out the placements, baste them in place. On top of the sleeves, do 2 rows of gathering stitches like this. And gather up until the armhole length on the sleeve matches an armhole on the bodice. Place the center of the sleeve on the shoulder seam. Pin the pieces together and sew. Now it's looking like something. Overlock the armhole seam. And with the right side together, sew the underarm and side seam with a continuous stitch. Join 2 pieces of peplum together to get one long piece, and roll hem all edges except for one long edge. I want to do gathering stitch on remaining long edge. I like using a gathering foot that came with my sewing machine, but you can also gather with basting stitches. When using a gathering foot, you need to hold your fabric behind the presser foot so the fabric bunches up behind it. This will create a nice gathering and it's quite a time saver. The last step is to attach the gathered peplum to the upper bodice. I folded the tie neatly into the seam allowance so that when I attach the peplum and overlock the seam, the end of the tie is also finished nicely. Distribute the gather evenly and sew. Here is my finished blouse. Even though the shape of the sleeves was quite experimental, I really like how it came out. It's hard to film black fabric, but I hope you can see the shape a little. This is how you tie it. I wish the peplum had one more panel and more volume, but I just didn't have any more fabric. I actually like the way it looks when I wear it open. This will be a great substitute for a light jacket during summer. If you are still watching, thank you for sticking around this far. Please leave a comment below and subscribe for more sewing and DIY contents like this. Have a great day!